Hello and welcome to our weekly Torah Talk. Our guest today is Rabbi Norbert Weinberg of the Hollywood Temple Bethel in Los Angeles. Hello, Rabbi, Chag Sameach, and thank you for being with us.
Hello and Chag Sameach. I'm happy to be with you.
Well, we are not going to talk about a certain parsha. We're going to talk about two epic songs that both are read during the holiday of Pesach, of Passover. One is Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs, and one is the Song of the Sea. So let me begin with Shir HaShirim. The first two psukim say, Shir HaShirim asher li Shlomo, yishakeni min shikot piu ki tovim dodecha miyain. The Song of Songs, which is Solomon's, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is better than wine. And the second song, the one the people of Israel sing on the sea as they cross the Red Sea. אז ישיר משה ובני ישראל את השירה הזאת לאדוני ויאמרו לאמור השירה לאדוני כי גאו גאה סוס ורוכבו רמה בים. Then Moses and the children of Israel sang this song to the Lord, and they spoke, saying, I will sing to God, for very exalted is he, a horse and his rider he cast into the sea. So Rabbi, these are two very different parshas. These are two very different songs, right?
Oh, great contrast. Song of Songs, on the face of it, as you read it, Yishakeni ben Shekot Pihu, let him kiss me with the kiss of his mouth. If you read it on the surface, it's a love poetry, very explicit, describing the male, describing the female, describing search and hunt for each other. What does that possibly have to do with Pesach? So usually we'd say, well, it says, Ki hava stav, stav haba, halach lo. The winter is gone, the season has passed, now we're into the spring. So Pesach is spring, and this is spring. But that's not a very good connection. I could write anything else for springtime. And of course, the rabbis looked at it and said, maybe we want this book in the Bible, maybe we don't. And then Rabbi Akiva says, wait a minute, that's not possible. This book is the holiest of the writings, for Song of Songs, the most sacred of the writings. And then, well, wait a minute. What do you mean by that, Rabbi Akiva? He means by that, as Jews understood it for centuries, the relationship between the Jews and God is a relationship of lover and beloved. It's a love story. So if we're looking now at Song of Songs as a love story, now, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth is God talking to the children of Israel, teaching the children of Israel, those are the kisses of his mouth. And so all of the words of the Song of Songs are now understood to be a metaphor for how the Jew and his God relate, right. The Jewish people and God relate.
Right. I might say something that is totally beside the point, but it's a coincidence, but those who study Daf Yomi of the Talmud might know that this week we studied the wonderful love story of Rabbi Akiva and his wife Rachel. So maybe there is some connection.
He is a great romantic. All we know in Jewish history is that there's always the shadchan, there's always the matchmaker. Rabbi Akiva doesn't go to the matchmaker. He finds the daughter's boss and they fall in love. Where else do you find in rabbinic sources such a love story?
Yeah, and she's willing to sacrifice quite a bit to be with him.
And he changes his whole life for her. And so it's very natural then that of all the rabbis, he would look at Song of Songs and say, this is really what we go through as a people. This is how we experience it. Now, we want to say, how can we ignite that love once again? Jewish people once had a great love affair with God. We've gone through some ups and downs. That's what happens in a marriage. Sometimes we feel beaten. Sometimes we want to run away. Not all marriages go smoothly, but we want to reignite that sense. So now, here's a great question, though. Now, where does that tie in now with Shirat Hayam, the Song of the Sea? This is love poetry here on the one hand. Song of Sea is war poetry.
Right.
Adonai Ish Melchama, God is a man of war. Right? We have the famous line, "Mi kamocha ba'elim Adonai," who is like unto your Lord. That was supposed to be the slogan that the Maccabees took. Right? This power, this God is an experience of power. And so now, some of the rabbis suggested, there's a connection between Song of Songs and the Song of the Sea. And it's referred to in the Midrashim, where one of the rabbis said, that the Song of Songs is actually said by God at the crossing of the Red Sea. So that the Song of the Sea has in it elements of the Song of Songs. That same theme of the hero in Song of Songs, who is a mighty, powerful young man,
Right.
is the same vision of God in the Song of the Sea. To the extent that now, as Rabbi Akiva said...
So it's the warrior that the woman falls in love with in the Song of Songs is the same warrior that is victorious on the sea as he parts the sea?
That's right. And so the Midrashim themselves go through in the show line by line how one line describing God in one is describing God in the other. Finally, the rabbis come up, and just as Rabbi Akiva said that no song was greater than Song of Songs, so the rabbi said no event was greater, even compared to Sinai in some way, to the Torah at Sinai, than the event of the crossing of the sea. And they said even the scullery maid, the poorest of the poor, the lowest of the low, saw at that crossing of the Red Sea something that even the greatest of the prophets couldn't see. And they based it on one word, which was Ze'eli Mambehu. This is my God, and I shall declare his greatness. And they say, well, when you say this, you're pointing to something, which means that they all were seeing something. And they went on and said, even the baby sucking at his mother's breast stopped and sang, right? And a great experience. So they tied in these two experiences, this experience in the metaphor of Song of Songs and the experience of the children of Israel crossing the Red Sea. They tied the two together. And
so in some way, what you say is that on the sea, the people had this sense of intimacy with God that is expressed through the Song of Songs?
Right, that's it. Because they felt God as coming in personally and saving them. And think about it. The Song of the Sea, Shirat Hayam, is associated with the 7th day of Pesach, the end of Pesach.
Right.
And if you do a count of the days, it's plausible that they would be at the sea just in time for the 7th day of Pesach, and the crossing would be on the 7th day. And hence the association. And there are a lot of customs that revolve around going to the seaside or dancing around a bowl of water to reenact that crossing of the sea. Getting out of Egypt is one thing. Suddenly being caught in the middle of the desert with the ocean on one side and Pharaoh's chariots on the other side, the huge armed force on the other side, and feeling we've been trapped. That's their fear. We've been tricked. They're afraid. And all of a sudden, the way opens for them. They're suddenly on one side, and the enemy is vanished. In other words, at this moment, the Exodus is complete. Getting out of Egypt, well, the Egyptians chased us out. Now the sea is there. They're no more. Slavery is gone. We wiped it out, and we feel it as we experience it as God's hand in making this deliverance. And so that completes the liberation. That's the act of love that the people feel. We're saved. You saved us. You are our hero. There's Superman. God is Superman.
So it's not that we celebrate the Exodus on the first eve of Passover in the Seder. We celebrate it through the 7 days, and it is all completed by the end of Pesach.
Right. Great completion, great sense of completion. And hence the song.
Rabbi, thank you so much. Yeah, we
want to get that sense of exhilaration once again in our lives, in the spirit of the Jewish people once again.
Right. We have a Chag before us and Shabbat, so Chag Sameach and Shabbat Shalom, and thank you, Rabbi.
Chag Sameach and Shabbat Shalom to all of the listeners.